Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next presentation here. We have Emily Gorey from CARB from our Air Quality Planning and Science Division. She's going to be talking about databases. Her presentation is titled, Where Do All the Data Go? Please welcome Emily.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for introducing me, Kyle. So as Kyle mentioned, I'm going to be talking about where all the data go today. I am from the Air Resources Board, and my section is responsible for capturing all of the data that is measured at air monitoring sites throughout the state and making that data available to the public online. And so as our priorities and technologies change, we capture the story that of air quality improvement in the state of California through the databases and web tools that we've developed at CARB. So today I'll be showing you where all the data go. So today I'm going to talk about 3 systems that we've developed at CARB. And this slide shows a timeline of the development of these 3 systems and when they've been published to the public. In the early 1990s, we published the first CARB web pages known as the Aerometric Data Analysis and Management System, or IADM. And this website, this set of web pages and the database captures the official air quality data and regulatory statistics and makes it available, all of that information available to the public. Due to the nature of official data, it can sometimes take on the order of several months in order for the data to get from the air monitoring site to the databases, just due to the nature of having to fully verify that data. And so after we established the ADAM web pages in the 90s, we began developing a set of web pages, another set of web pages that would make the data available much more frequently and with a smaller time delay between collection and display. And in 2004, we launched the current version of that set of web pages, which we called the Air Quality and Meteorological Information System, or ACMAs. And this made data available from the regulatory network on a near real-time hourly basis. So these 2 tools, ADAM and ACMAs, have really done a great job of illustrating the air quality improvements that we've seen on a regional scale. But unfortunately, not all of the communities throughout the state have experienced the same improvements that we've seen on the regional scale. And so we've shifted our focus now recently to these communities that are disproportionately experiencing these air quality burdens. And later this year, we will be launching a new tool that will show focus on the community level air monitoring data. So these 3 systems involve both back-end databases as well as front-facing publicly available web pages. And everything that I show you today in my presentation is actually accessible through any internet-enabled device. You don't need any sort of login or password. And anything I do, anything I can access, you can access as well. So the first system that I am going to discuss today is our ADAM system. As I mentioned, ADAM stands for the Aerometric Data Analysis and Management System. And it is our repository for official data and regulatory statistics. ADAM is unique in that it contains not only the current standards, but it also supports statistics related to the previous air quality standards as well. And it also supports both the national and the state ambient air quality standards. ADAM only contains official air quality data, as I mentioned. And so this means that the only source of data in ADAM is the US EPA's air quality system. And so ADAM includes that information from air monitoring sites in California, as well as several sites in near border or in the bordering areas of Nevada and Mexico. And then we make all of the data and statistics in our ADAM database available to the public, where you guys can interact with the data and download graph the data on our IATM web pages. So in order to highlight how the data get from the air monitoring locations to our database at CARB, I'd like to use this diagram here. This diagram highlights, so in this diagram, the first step is, of course, to collect the data at the air monitoring locations. And this whole process really would not be possible without that. The raw data collected at these air monitoring sites is then fully reviewed and certified as correct by the data providers. And this really rigorous process that is outlined by the EPA's rules can take on the order of several months to complete, so it's a really involved process. So as I mentioned, there's kind of a delay just due to the nature of this official quality data from when it's collected to when it is deemed official data. So once the data providers have fully reviewed and certified the data, they submit it to the US EPA's air quality system. And once it is in that database, it gets the title of being official data. Once the data are in the EPA's database, we then pull the data to our system at CARB, our ATOM database. And then we make it available to the public on our IATM web pages. So the next few slides, in the next few slides, I'd like to highlight some of the web tools that we have available on our IATM website for you to interact with the regulatory quality data and statistics. So this slide here shows the IATM homepage. And these boxes on the left are actually different tools that we have of accessing various air quality statistics and data. For the interest of time, I'm only going to highlight one of these tools for you today, and that is the trends summaries. But I fully encourage you to check out all of these tools since they're all really powerful, and you can really do a lot with them. So the trend summaries, as the name kind of implies, are a way of looking at how the statistics and data have changed over a period of time. When you click on the trend summaries, you get a page that looks something like this, where you're able to select a pollutant of interest, time period of interest, and then you can select from various regional and ways of aggregating the data on an area, on a spatial scale. And then we have more information to kind of describe some of these terminologies here. So it's very user-friendly, and you can easily understand how to interact with this data. So when you submit your desired selections from the previous page, the output looks something like this. And I know this is a lot of information, and I'm not going to go into all of this slide in detail. But as you can see, basically there's a data table with your output, and then we have more descriptive information down here. But really what I want to highlight on this slide is that you can easily jump between the various statistics that we have available for your selection. So in this example, I chose the national ozone statistics here at the UC Davis campus monitor. But we can also jump to the state ozone statistics or PM 2.5. So let's zoom in on the data table. Here you can see that we have the years we selected on the left, and then we have various ozone statistics across the top. As I mentioned earlier, ATOM supports not only the current ambient air quality, not only statistics related to the current ambient air quality standards, but also past ones as well. So you can see here that we have the current 8-hour standard, which is 70 ppb for ozone. We have the past one, 75 ppb, and even one back further, the 80 ppb standard. We also include the 1-hour revoked national 1-hour standard. And then you can see that we have the design values for some of these standards. For those of you that are not familiar with the design value is a really important statistic, since it is the one statistic that we compare to the level of the air quality standard to determine attainment. Another thing to notice in this data table is that there's orange numbers and white numbers. The orange numbers actually indicate the exceedance of the particular ambient air quality standard. And so in this particular case, if we're just looking qualitatively, for example, at this 70 ppb standard, we can see that the design values back in 2007 were above the level of the standard. But as we've gotten to more recent years, all the numbers are white, so we can easily tell that they are now below the level of the standard. But of course, looking at a data table is not the best way to visualize the data. And so we also include in this bottom row here checkboxes so that you can actually graph the data columns of interest to you. And when we graph the data, in this example, I chose to graph the design value for the revoked 1-hour ozone standard and the design value for the most recent 8-hour ozone standard, the 70 ppb standard. And so we get an output of 4 different lines on this plot, where we have the years across the bottom, and then we have concentration on the y-axis. And the various lines represent, we have these dashed lines, which actually represent the levels of the 2 standards that we're comparing against, the 1-hour and the 8-hour. And then we have these other lines here, which actually represent the design values. So for this blue line, represents the 1-hour design value, and the green dashed line up here represents the level of that revoked 1-hour standard. And now, in the same way, we have the 8-hour ozone design value and the standard, and we can see that both of the design values are below the standards for both of these scenarios. And so we're always trying to improve our ATOM tool, and currently the tool focuses a lot on ozone and PM2.5 since these are the major pollutants in California. But we also want to expand that to include statistics for other ambient air quality standards like sulfur dioxide. We want to expand our support for PM2.5 to include more standards and statistics, and as well as include other data sets like the PM2.5 speciation or greenhouse gas data. And we also want to provide more visual tools as well, including GIS functionality, which will enable us to look at the data on a more spatial scale, put it into context. So the next data system that I'd like to talk about is our ACMAs system. So the data system that we just covered, the ATOM pages, those again are only the official air quality data and statistics. On the other hand, ACMAs is our way of getting at the data sooner. So this diagram highlights the parallel data path that the data take getting into our ACMAs system. You can see the ATOM path that we just followed in the previous slides, and then now you can see that ACMAs follows this parallel path. So again, we get the data from the regulatory network for ACMAs, but instead of while data providers are doing that full review and certification process, we actually collect the raw data from the data providers, they send it to us, and we run an automated quality assurance routine on it in our ACMAs system. This is a really robust automated quality assurance routine that we developed at CARB, and it really is able to capture or differentiate between good quality data and questionable data with a really high degree of accuracy. And so we can generally trust the data that's being shown on the front pages of ACMAs, since it has undergone some check. It's not just raw data from the instruments. So basically, after it goes through the QA routine, quality assurance routine, it gets sent to our ACMAs database and web pages. It's important to note that even though we have this quality assurance routine that does flag data as questionable and doesn't put it at the forefront of our web pages, we don't delete any data, and we do provide that data through our download tool in ACMAs, so you can still access the questionable data as well. So since ACMAs is more of one more thing to highlight on here. As you can see, there is a connection between ATOM and ACMAs, and this is because as official air quality data become available in ATOM, it replaces the preliminary air quality data in ACMAs. So ACMAs really represents a seamless hybrid of the preliminary air quality data that's undergone our quality checks and the fully certified data, the official quality data. Since ACMAs is geared more towards preliminary data, we are a little bit more flexible in what we can provide. We no longer have just the one data source of AQS that we saw with ATOM. We now have the data providers providing data to us directly from over 260 air monitoring sites in California and 31 air quality sites in Mexico, as well as over 800 meteorological sites. ACMAs includes air quality data from 25 air quality parameters and 16 meteorological ones. And again, we have that automated quality assurance routine to help improve data capture, since we can recognize when instruments are down quicker, we can recognize when there's issues with the instruments sooner, and keep the data flowing and prevent those gaps in the data. We also have a wide variety of tools available in ACMAs, ranging from very simplistic and very public-friendly to quite technical and really geared more towards the data providers or the more technical people. And one of our simplest tools that we have is our Breathe Well tool, which I'll highlight in a subsequent slide, but it is a very public-friendly tool that is very visual. So here we have a screenshot of our ACMAs homepage, and as with the ATOM pages that we saw before, we do provide various tools and ways of getting at the data in ACMAs. So we have a couple of ozone tools. We have an air quality data tool, which gets at basically all of the other parameters, as well as visual tools like we have a Google map that is updated hourly with preliminary data. And then we have the Breathe Well tool, which is that very public-friendly tool again. So again, in the interest of time, I'm only going to highlight a couple things from ACMAs, but again, please feel free to explore this on your own. There's so many different tools that are really powerful and can really aid in your work with the data. So this is a screenshot of our Breathe Well tool. And as you can see, this is that really public-friendly, very visual, really easily interpreted tool. We can see that there are color-coded concentrations. We have, again, ozone and PM2.5. And they're color-coded generally based on this color scale here that is familiar to a lot of people. And then we also have recommendations on the types of activities that you should or should not attempt during various air quality levels. And we also have more information if you want to find out more about what the numbers themselves mean. And then we also have a map where you can view the sites around you and kind of put it into context spatially. The reason that I wanted to highlight this tool is because at CARB, we get a lot of questions from the public asking what the air quality is right now. Should I let the kids go to recess? Should I go for, should I move to Mendocino? And those kinds of questions. And so this is a really easy tool to point them to, and I'm sure that that's not a unique scenario for our agency. And so I encourage you to use this tool, link people to this tool as well. So now I'm going to switch to a much more technical tool. This is our air quality data tool. And this lets you get at pretty much any of the data that you could want in ACMAs. I'm only going to highlight one example from this today, but you can see that there are various tabs that each have different selectable options. The first tab is daily data, then we have hourly data, and then we have special reports, which is where a lot of those data provider geared tools live. So for this example, I chose the hourly data tab just to keep things kind of simple. But again, it follows a similar format to the one we saw with the ATOM tool before, where we can select a parameter of a pollutant of interest, we can select a time period of interest, and then a region of interest as well. The result, again, is a tabular display. For this example, I chose to look at the sites in Sacramento County, and we can see the sites listed here on the left, and then for this listing, because it's hourly data, we have the hours of the day across the top, as well as some rough statistics calculated from this. I do want to point out that these statistics provided are not related to any ambient air quality standards. They're just straight statistics, straight averages and maxima. But they do kind of give a glimpse of the day's data. Besides the data table, a couple of things I want to point out on this results page are this link down here where it says quick. So you can actually really quickly download just a CSV or an Excel file of this printout so that you can do your own data analysis on it. And then another option, another thing to point out is this change selection piece down here. So you actually don't have to go back to the original data tool to change your options. You can just easily change your selection from down here. And then as with ATOM, we do have the graphing capability again. And so we can see that we get a nice graph of the day of data with the hours of the day across the bottom, concentrations on the y-axis. And the reason that I wanted to show this tool is that beyond just looking at how the data are behaving throughout the course of a day, this is a really useful tool for doing some rough quality checks on your data. For example, if you are a site operator and you happen to notice that there's kind of a weird value, like perhaps there's a spike in the ozone concentrations at 1 p.m. What you can use this for is you can plot with adjacent sites to see if they're also seeing that odd spike to kind of determine whether you should investigate it as real more or kind of which direction to take. So it's a really quick, really easy visual tool for doing those rough quality checks and helping your data processing. So for this example, I did that thing, and I did just that. I plotted some adjacent sites in Sacramento County, and you can see they all trace very well with one another, as we would expect from sites that are nearby. As I mentioned, there's a lot of tools that we have developed just for data providers. We have this comparison that we can do. It's not really the primary use you'd think of for that, but it's definitely useful for kind of looking at outliers. We also have tools that help you look at the gaps in data submission. So this is our monthly inventory tool, and you can see where there's no data being submitted for a particular site. And so this can help you identify gaps in data sooner, and you can bring your instruments back online, or I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but it also distinguishes between preliminary and official data, so you can also keep track of the official data that you've submitted to AQS versus just the preliminary data that we're displaying in ACMAs. And then the third tool that we have, I mentioned previously, that we don't get rid of any data in ACMAs. While we do the quality checks through our automated quality assurance routine, all of the data are available, and you can see that you can actually download only the questionable data. And because our quality assurance routine is so robust, it's checking for like 5 different things, and it's based on historical data at the actual site by the time of the year. So if you download the questionable data, it can aid in that full validation certification process in making the data become official data, as just another tool of looking at questionable points. So also, as with our ATOM system, we're always trying to improve our ACMA system. And we've recently made some upgrades since the last PQAO training. We did add the statistics related to the 2015, the 8-hour ozone standard that was promulgated in 2015. And then we also have added greenhouse gas data and near roadway data, or near roadway sites. And then we're also looking into adding even more long-term trends for ozone. The final system that I'd like to highlight for you today is quite a bit different from the previous 2 systems we've discussed. So with ATOM and ACMAs, again, it's looking at that regional scale data, and so we've been able to really track the improvements in regional air quality. But again, we have these communities that are not seeing the same benefits that we're seeing on a regional scale. And so as we shift our focus towards addressing these air pollution burdens that these communities are facing, we're developing a new system for the community level data. And so while this system will focus on the community level data, we do want to make it kind of a comprehensive picture of all the air monitoring in California. And so it will also include the regulatory network data as well. So as you can see from this diagram, here's the previous 2 systems we discussed in gray. And you can see that we're going to be capturing data from those traditional data providers in our new AQView system from the regulatory network. And through community level efforts that these data providers are conducting. And then we'll also have these new data providers, such as community-based organizations, that have not previously been included or been monitoring in California. And so as with the other systems we've discussed, it follows kind of a similar path where we collect the raw data from all of these different data providers, and we'll run it through some sort of automated quality assurance routine that we developed for this new system. And it's something that we'll have to improve over time since community data is definitely very new, but it will probably be based off of a lot of the experience that we have in developing this very robust ACMAs quality assurance program. After the data are run through this quality assurance check, we will display the data in our new data portal, which we're calling AQView. As you can see, it's also connected to the other 2 systems, so this was just what I was mentioning about including the regulatory monitoring network data as well. So before I talk about the new system that we're developing, I'd like to take a moment to talk about community data, because it is something that is really relatively new to, I think, most, if not all of us. And so, as I've said many times now, we really have made improvements on the regional scale, but really we need to address these pollution burdens that these people are facing in these communities. And so in 2017, we passed Assembly Bill 617, or AB 617 for short. And this really requires us to shift our focus towards these communities and start measuring on the community scale, which is very new to us. So the program implemented by AB 617 is one that's definitely going to grow a lot over time. But for the first year of the program, we have 9 communities that were selected for air quality, or for the community monitoring programs. And the monitoring efforts will really be led by the air districts. But through AB 617, we also had 28 air grants that were awarded, and 23 of those actually have air monitoring components to them, which will be led by community-based organizations. So as you can imagine, with these maps showing the locations of the 9 communities and the various air grants with monitoring components, we have a wide variety. We have very, very unique communities that are all going to have very different pollutants that they are concerned about, as well as different objectives for their monitoring and different things that they hope to get out of it. And in order to achieve that, we'll have to employ a wide variety of technologies, including the regulatory quality instrumentation all the way to low-cost sensors. And so this is really challenging to really combine all of this into one system. And so this kind of highlights a timeline that we've been on to develop this AQVIA system to really get at combining all of this data. And we are currently in this development phase, and we're scheduled to go live sometime later this year. So the next few slides are some draft pages that we have of our AQVIA system. And so really what this represents is when you first land on the AQVIA pages, you will see a map of the state of California. It will have, you'll be able to select a pollutant of interest, and the various monitors throughout the state will follow kind of a color scale based on the, related to the concentrations being measured. We also have a time slider that lets you go back 24 hours to view how the monitoring data have changed. And then we also have not only the monitoring locations, but we have these blue balloons, which actually represent those 9 communities that were selected. And as you zoom in on the map, at a certain zoom extent, those blue balloons will actually become the community boundaries, which are part of the AB 617 process. They're defined in that. And so as we zoom in, one thing that you can notice is that there are different shapes to all of these monitors that we have on the map. And that actually represents the different groups that are collecting the data. So we have different icons for air districts versus community-based organizations versus CARB and EPA or other national sources. Another thing to note is if you click on the blue tint, it will actually bring up a summary of monitoring information about that community or other resources as well. And if you click on a monitor itself, it will tell you more metadata about the monitor, so basically the who, what, where, when, and why of that monitoring location. And then, so these 2 slides are basically the same map page, it's just different zoom extents. If you scroll down on the page, we actually have an interactive time series plot where you can select sites from the map and plot them on a time series. So this obviously is not real data. This is just shown for illustrative purposes. But you can see that the concentrations will match the color that is on the map for the monitor. And so, for example, if all of the values were green throughout the day, the background would be green for the time series. And we have different timescales we can look at, past 24 hours, past week, past month. And so this is another feature that we have in our AQVIA system. So there's a lot of words on this slide, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just want to emphasize that the AB 617 program, the community monitoring stuff is very new, and we're building AQVIA to be very flexible, and it's something that we're going to continue to enhance over time as we learn more, and as we hear more about what people are interested in. So just to wrap things up, today we talked about CARB's 3 data systems. First, we took a look at the ATOM pages, which contain the official air quality data and statistics. And it supports not only the national and state standards, but also current and past standards as well. Then we took a look at ACMAs, which includes a lot of the same information as ATOM, it includes near real-time preliminary data from the regulatory network. And then finally, we took a brief look at our new system, AQView, which will launch later this year, and focuses on the community scale data. And we'll be continuing to enhance this over time. So with that, I would like to thank you all for joining me today, and I fully encourage you to check out all of these systems and keep an eye out for our new system later this year. Thank you. Does anybody, yes?
So you mentioned one of the challenges, so a lot of data coming from different levels, from the certified technology to low-cost sensors. How do you differentiate the data quality in your system?
So we actually have been thinking about various ways of communicating this because there is such a huge difference between the various data sets that will be coming in. And one of the concepts that we've been considering is an idea called data confidence. So we have these toggles available where we have basically high, medium, and low categories that basically get at not only the instrumentation, but also how was that, what considerations went into citing that instrument? Is it following a specific federal reference method, or has it been modified? And how is the instrument being maintained? And so all of these will kind of factor into what category the various monitors fall into, with kind of the low-cost sensors that we don't really know anything about how they're being maintained or operated, or cited kind of in the low category, and the regulatory stuff in the high category. Yes?
What about for stuff that hasn't been monitored before that communities are going to want? Like, we have one community that wants us to start monitoring for ammonia, another one for dichloropropene. It's not something that's not in the normal list, so how are we going to handle that data in something like this?
So that's definitely something that we have really been thinking a lot about, and we've struggled with as well. But the way that we're planning to represent basically the non, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the term, sorry. Yeah, the pollutants that aren't the standard pollutants is we're going to use a blue gradient and look at the concentrations that we've historically seen throughout the state, and really heavily caveat that the different color scales don't correspond to any sort of health effects. It's just a relative sort of blue gradient that shows relative levels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Are we going to take any considerations like what's it called? The chemical safety guide? The other name was
I'm sorry?
the chemical safety guidelines, like how much exposure you can have. Are we going to have those calculated?
Like the RELs and stuff for toxics?
Yeah, that.
Yeah, we've been trying to think of ways to incorporate things like the RELs, and the cancer risk for the cancerous compounds, and the non-cancerous risk for the others. We're trying to look at ways of incorporating that, but at least for this first launch, we're going to start with just a simple blue gradient, and then we're hoping to coordinate with other agencies, and well, we've already been coordinating with other agencies to try and think about some of this stuff. Yes?
Is the mobile monitoring data that's going to be a part of this factor, is it going to be visible at all? I know that's hard to then put on the same map.
Yeah, mobile monitoring is a really different data set, and our plan right now for it, because basically the raw mobile monitoring data is not really something that's useful and can really easily be misinterpreted. What we're looking for is, you're welcome, and we encourage you to submit the raw data, but we're looking for kind of like a report. We have an option to upload, for data providers to upload like PDF reports or links to web pages where they've summarized that data and processed it appropriately. Yes?
So for items that may be like toxic monitoring, where it's going to be a laboratory analysis provided, will there be a separate section where they would just go down to downloads and then they can download historical data then?
Yeah, exactly. For this first release, the map that I showed is just the real-time data. It'll actually be hourly data so that it's comparable with the regulatory network. But for the laboratory data and the other discrete sampling data, we'll have a data download tool where you can download it, and then maybe in the future we can publish like map summaries that can be downloaded as well. But for now, for our initial launch, it's going to be a data download where you can just download the data. Yes?
So how do you handle so you're showing hourly averages over there, and a lot of organizations use hourly averages or even higher resolution, but the standards are based around 8-hour or 24-hour averages. So how do you handle that messaging, or what does that mean to the
That's a question that we've been getting a lot, and I think we're going to be calculating the Nowcast AQI, which again is based on the 8 or 24 hours, but for now we're going to be using the same health messaging for that. But it is something that we're discussing with a couple of air districts right now to hopefully work out, and if you have any ideas too, we'd be happy to talk about it, that messaging.
I do think that it's valid to talk about AQI on an hourly average, because it's saying, well, if you spend another 8 hours or 24 hours in that air, then you're going to have that effect.
Right.
It's just like the speed limit when you're driving at 100 miles an hour, you can't use a different scale, but you're just going to be driving for 2 minutes. So I do believe it's valid, but it's a question of debate.
Yes.
Is there going to be a function where you can look at multiple pollutants in one area on the same chart, or is that going to have to be single pollutants each time?
At this point, no, but we do want to expand our graphing capabilities and our plotting capabilities in general a lot in the future. So this will just be a time series of whatever is being displayed on the map, but we also want to create kind of like a different graphing capabilities, different plotting capabilities. We want to include things like pollution roses and wind roses in the future, and things like that as well, and pollutant comparisons or parameter comparisons. Yes?
Yeah, you talk about adding data is preliminary data. What is the process once the data is submitted to the AQS to update that data on the website?
So right now we have automatic updates. Our ATOM and ACMA systems are linked, so every night it updates certain things, and every week we update over a larger time period in case there were any really big updates, like in the distant past. Yes.
Modification in AQS, is that data also automatically updated?
Yeah. Sorry, that's kind of what I was getting at. So every night we update a couple of days, I think, of AQS data, or sorry, of the ATOM AQS data, official data into ACMAs. But every week we do run summaries that look back further to see if there were updates in past historic data in AQS as well.
All right, thanks again, Emily.